Die Gedanken sind frei.
My thoughts freely flower.
The purpose of Freethought Forum is to be vigilant to the encroachment of religion into government and to educate the general public as to what a freethinker is.
No hunter can trap them, no person can deny. Die Gedanken sind frei.
Hi, welcome to Freethought Forum. I'll be your host today. My name is Jeff Levan, and with me today is Catherine Fahringer, who is the director of Freethought Forum, and next to her is Mr. Vester Vanstrom, who is a Unitarian minister and also a lawyer who's been active with the ACLU and other civil rights groups and free thought organizations and such. And we're going to talk today, the subject we're going to talk about is the atheist syndrome, and in general, some of the misconceptions that have been out there about atheists, non-believers, agnostics. I know we've covered this briefly on another program, but on this one I wanted to mention specifically this book, which is called The Atheist Syndrome, and it's by a man named John Koster, and it's received some publicity lately because syndicated columnists such as Patrick Buchanan and I believe George Will even have made references to it. In the book, he claims that modern atheism, modern scientific atheism, which is what he selects certain people to represent that, and then puts them up as sort of a straw man, and then knocks them down. And one of the things that he uses is he says that the men and women who founded modern scientific atheism all shared certain common experiences, and under careful examination, a definite psychological and spiritual pattern emerges. I don't know how qualified he is to make statements concerning or evaluate their psychological or spiritual patterns, because he is, to my knowledge, he's neither a theologian or a psychologist. He's a journalist. However, he brings up some things concerning four major influences on what he considers to be four major influences on atheistic thought. Those being, in order, Darwin and Huxley, Freud, Nietzsche, and Marx. Now the selection of Nietzsche and Marx was, I thought it was, on his part, was sort of easy pickings, because in this country he's of course not going to get many people saying that Marx was a good guy, or Nietzsche. But he goes throughout the book. I saw it as nothing more than an attack on atheism in general by attacking the people who were, some people who were atheists or agnostics or doubters.
The premise he has also is that all atheists hate their fathers. That's why they can't accept a heavenly father, is because they despise their earthly fathers. What a bunch of, he's got shifty eyes. I saw him on television. He's got mean, shifty eyes, and he doesn't know what he's talking about. We're going to have to educate our viewers about atheism.
Well, that's interesting, because I just happened to have brought another book, which I would propose as an antidote to the atheist syndrome, called Atheism, the Case Against God. It's by George Smith, who is a well-known writer. I believe he's a PhD of philosophy, and he has written widely about this. But I thought something of interest that I would read to you from the very first few pages of his book, and this was written in 1978, long before John Koster's book came out. It says, some religious critics prefer to attack the unpopular ideas associated with atheism rather than face the challenge of atheism directly. Indeed, it is not uncommon to find entire books with the expressed intent of demolishing atheism, but which fail to discuss such basic issues as why one should believe in a God at all. These books are content to identify atheism with specific personalities such as Nietzsche, Marx, Camus, and Sartre, and by criticizing the views of these individuals, the religionist author fancies himself to have destroyed atheism. In most cases, however, the critic has not even discussed atheism. I find that to be the case with the atheist syndrome, and with a lot of people. A lot of people will attack someone like Madeleine Murray, who they believe represents atheism. However, there's a wide body of people out there who may believe for all different reasons, either in religion or not believe in religion, for many different reasons.
I think it's like religion. I mean, anytime you get into the study of religion, or you question why you are here and what you're doing and where you're going to arrive at some kind of personal philosophical answers or something that will serve your purpose in life, right, Van?
Well, yes, I'm interested in that. I haven't read that book, The Case Against God, but I would ask immediately, what God is he talking about? Is he talking about the Christian God, the Hindu God, the Brahmin God, the Egyptian gods, and many gods? It seems to me that the whole idea of God itself is a human projection. In other words, what we're talking about is some need to have some certainty or some idea to give us a handle on purpose and meaning and goals in life, and to come up with a God, especially the personal God. It seems to me is sort of an arrogant position to take, because it says, well, we know that God is like we human beings. He feels, and he doesn't like things, and he has certain tastes, and he gets angry, and he loves, and he's just exactly like us. I've often said God is the ultimate perfect human being. But it's what we would like to be if we were God.
Well, I never found he's so perfect in the Bible. I don't think he's. I wouldn't.
Well, you have to separate what is in sacred literature and what is the, I might say, generic conception that many believers have of God.
Yes, the God of the Bible is another human projection, and it can be all. It doesn't have to be a God who is perfect. But the ideal of, when we talk about God, it seems to me we're talking about the ideal deity. And it would be the deity who loves everything, who can solve all the problems, who knows everything.
And how come he doesn't solve them?
That's the
how come he doesn't mean bad things?
That's just the dilemma we're in, is that when you ascribe to God all of these human characteristics, immediately it raises all kinds of problems in all the flights and the Holocaust and the tragedies of this world. If God is all-powerful, why doesn't he stop those things?
Well, that's it. If he is all-powerful, he could make everything work out all right, couldn't he? And he wouldn't have crashed the plane in the first place. He'd be a better flyer.
And he would know ahead of time what was going to happen, and if he knows a tragedy is going to come, why doesn't he try to stop it?
Well, because he planned out everything the way he wanted it, didn't he? So therefore, he can't change things. Then he's not all wise and all knowing. He's maybe powerful now. But he's gonna change his position here. It's always given me a lot of trouble. I know that. Are you familiar with the rabbi? What is his name? That wrote the book about why bad things happen to good people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's just written a new one.
Yeah, I haven't read either one. The new one is out, I know, and he was here recently on WAI.
It's called Why God.
Yes, Why God. I knew it had God in the title,
but in my mind.
But did you read his first one?
No, I haven't read it.
Well, I'm faintly curious, not curious enough to read it. To spend a whole lot of time with it, but I would like to glance through it and see what the general idea is, because there has to be a lot of fancy footwork, I would think, in explaining something like that. Why bad things happen to good people? I mean, you're alive, you're in this world, and bad things do happen.
Let me take another tack on this and take the opposite point of view. I don't think there are many true atheists in this world. You may call yourself an atheist, but really down deep in your heart, you believe in some kind of order or laws of nature.
How would you define atheism then?
Okay, I would define atheism as one who believes in utter chaos without any ruling principle or laws of science or laws of nature. If there's no gravity, if there's no science of electricity, nothing that governs what happens in this world, then I think you could adopt the true yourself as a true atheist.
Well,
but if you believe in
me an atheist, then.
If you believe in the laws of science, gravity, electricity, osmosis, and all those things that happen.
Right.
And they happen regularly because science has proved these things. That's what science is all about, trying to figure out what these laws are and how we can use them and how we can make them work for us and to bring us a better quality of life. So the true atheist, in my belief, is one who even rejects all of this order in the universe.
Would you say then this order is God? Is that what you're saying,
No,
or is that another name for it?
My definition of this would be that God is that force or power or energy or ground without which there would be nothing. And you can't. And if you try to ascribe to it certain characteristics, then you immediately lose it. But it's that force that makes things the way they are. And it's not a personal being, it's an impersonal force or power that underlies the whole beingness of everything that is.
I thought I would just briefly quote something here, again from George Smith's. This is a very good book, Defining Atheism, and allowing someone a very good look at contemporary atheist thought. But when he talks about definitions, meaning of atheism, he says, atheism is something defined as the belief that there is no God of any kind. Oh, sometimes defined.
That's bad.
Well, he's saying sometimes, though. He's talking about the popular conception here.
Well, yes, unfortunately.
The belief that there is no God of any kind, and that is a type of atheist. Or the claim that a God cannot exist. While these are categories of atheism, they do not exhaust the meaning of atheism, and they are somewhat misleading with respect to the basic nature of atheism. Atheism in its basic form is not a belief, it is the absence of belief.
Yes, exactly. It's
An
so
atheist
simple.
is not primarily a person who believes that a God does not exist, rather he does not believe in the existence of a God. So by that definition, I would consider myself an atheist. Honestly speaking, I would also understand the agnostic's point of view. The true agnostic would say that, explain to me what it is you're talking about when you say God, and then I'll let you know if I...
Agnosticism is a good point of view, I think, because it's arrogant to believe or to think that you could know if there was a God, that you could really know what he, she, or it was.
Well, let me say then that I haven't met any gods yet that I can believe in.
Yeah.
Put it that way.
That's really basically what it means. At this current time of my life, I have no theistic belief. I haven't found anyone who could propose a God to me that I found stood up under close examination of using my mind. So atheism, it's like you say something is asymmetrical. That's not bad. It doesn't make a statement other than things are not symmetrical. I personally don't like the picture in the middle of the fireplace and the candlestick on each end. I would be more apt to hang the picture on one side and the two candlesticks on the other side, and that's asymmetrical. But to me, it's pleasing to the eye, just as in my personal philosophy, being without, I haven't found one yet. I'm not saying there isn't to some people, but he's very real, but not to me.
It's interesting that this man cites Darwin as an atheist. Is it a scientific atheism? Is that what he's talking about? Scientific materialism?
Well, he steps around this very gingerly. Yeah. I think he may be a little bit aware. One of the things that I didn't like that he did, and this goes back to it, is he picked and chose what he chose to. As a journalist, he should be well aware of what he's doing. For instance, he says Darwin's theory of evolution, he was not the only person to ever think. And he goes on like this is an expose saying that there were several people who proposed it before him. But in The Origin of the Species, in the introduction, Darwin cites 35 people who came before him, had published before him, and acknowledges those people. One thing, if anything, Darwin was meticulous in giving credit where credit was due.
Well, a really good scientist is that way. You find these frauds occasionally in the scientific arena.
And I think he did the same thing, though, with Darwin's faith or lack of. Darwin was a questioner. He believed in natural universe.
I don't know what his personal beliefs were, Darwin's personal beliefs, but I know that he was a Unitarian in his time, when Unitarianism was not very popular.
Well,
and it became less popular after he had published his findings.
He had originally studied to go into, he was going to try to go into the priesthood. Yeah. His father had encouraged him there. But he didn't find it to his liking, although he considered himself devout when he went out on the
But I think there are many scientists who would say that they are agnostics. They can't understand that these are really meaningless questions when you ask a an unanswerable question. And so they put all of that aside. But I think in a sense there can be religious. For instance, Einstein said he felt scientists were very religious, because what they were trying to do in looking into the microscopes and getting down to the very what is the really real, they were exploring what life was all about, what existence was all about, and they could see these forces working under their microscope, and by which you could set up experiments, and you could see how they came out, and you could make a conclusion about the results. And he said there was no greater feeling as a scientist than to, in awe, look through this microscope and seeing what was underneath there, and just realizing that they were trying to find out what the purpose was and how it was governed.
Yeah. Well, I find it very exciting. I find it exhilarating. It's thrilling, but it's beyond the big man in the sky with the beard.
Well, you see, I think this is a straw man too. If you ascribe all these human characteristics to the God that you reject, that's easy. But when you come down and reject all orderliness within the universe,
I wouldn't do that.
Well, then you see you're not an atheist. You have some
not by your
principles.
definition, I guess, but I would say by that would be natural law, as opposed to, like, we make laws for how we drive down the street and such, civil law. However, natural law is something we discover, scientists discover, whereas there is a difference. There are some people who might argue that laws of interaction between people can also be discovered by the objective nature of reality, but I think that's a little deep for our discussion right here, but basically that would be the difference I would find. And as far as like what you said about the straw man, that goes back, I think if you read like my interpretation of the Old Testament and the New Testament is of a very patriarchal figure, I mean almost like a father. I mean, it punishes the children when they're bad, when they don't follow. And if you'll notice, especially in the Old Testament, the Jews are constantly turning away. Now, if someone had shown me a pillar of fire and all this magical stuff, I mean, I think I would be there, whatever you say,
Yeah,
I mean,
Dad.
that would prove it for me.
Right.
However, they're constantly turning away. See, and the story is told, I think, to encourage that obedience of the parent. The obedience of the child towards the parent, and that's the way the believer is pictured. The Jews are constantly pictured in the Old Testament of they go every time they go wrong or don't strictly follow or use reason or anything else to try to change their world other than by following the strict rules of God or Jehovah, they go bad. The people come by and kill them or something else.
But you say, you can't. The word, the Jewish God is a metaphor when they talk about it, because they said they couldn't name God. They didn't want to use that because to name him was to denigrate him, was to make him something that he wasn't. And here using he and him and all this is to humanize it, which is something they rejected too, I think. So that they were looking for something, this power or force that underlay existence. And it was this that they were talking about, but the only way they could talk about it was in human terms. And so when they said, well, it's a shorthand phrase for all of this unknowable things that are going on, they just say God for an easy reference. But then it got to be a literal interpretation of that word and became to have real human kinds of meanings.
Well, didn't he moon in the Old Testament?
Yes.
There's all kinds of God is like a superhuman in a way in the Old Testament, the way it's written, what we have, and to me that's one of the problems I have with that version of God. Now, the God that you're referring to is more of a God as a concept in a hierarchy of concepts. The highest. This is what St. Augustine,
but
I
you
believe.
See, if you're an atheist, you have to reject that too.
What, hierarchy of concepts?
Yes.
No.
If it's these underlying laws that govern the way existence reacts and acts.
Observed laws, though.
Observed laws.
Which is just observation of objective reality, what reality is.
Yeah. Okay.
So in other words,
But I think that the basic atheist is one who would reject even that and would say it's all chaotic and it's all random, and that we only see patterns of order in there which there really aren't.
Yeah, I would disagree with that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I would disagree with anyone who expounded that idea. I think that would be silly. We know plenty at this point. There's a place for randomness, certainly, in the universe. And physicists, I wish Don was on. He could talk more about this because he's well schooled in physics. Certainly, randomness has some place.
I think these who are striking down the atheism and those gods are using straw men. That they're using false images, false metaphors, and it's easy to do that kind of thing.
The problem is, I think, in both cases, there are atheists who follow the type of thinking that John Koster talks about, I'm certain, although I haven't met very many of them.
I haven't either.
However, I have found an awful lot of people of the fundamentalist bent who Jehovah is a very real, that was a person to them. And when you say Methuselah lived 969 years, they mean he lived 969 years. However, the same people would probably not agree with the Sumerians who said that some of their kings lived to be 60,000 years old, you know? And they'd say that's preposterous. You know, I don't know how to answer that, you know? They say, well, you can't know because you weren't there. But I can use my reason to make a reasonably good guess that probably that's not true. Probably they didn't live that long. That's the... When you say about straw men, like I was saying here before with Koster, he picks people that it's very easy to pick on, such as, for example, Marx. Marx, of course, still being followed in communist countries as a philosophical
But Marx,
doctrine.
in a way, had his own God, too,
Yeah,
because
definitely.
he saw this movement of history and economics working in the civilization as it was going on, and that he saw the forces of the economics as the determinants of what was going to happen and what the future would bring and what was really real in our lives. And he segregated that out as a kind of sacred thing, as a theory or as an idea, but he made this as his guiding principle.
My main point of disagreement with Marx would be his exalting of the collectivist state, the idea that all for the good of the all, and the denial of the individual that I see on Marx.
And the communism that was set up, to me, is a religion, because it takes over the total lives of people, and you have to believe in this onward going and progress of the human race under the economic presuppositions that they laid down, and that you have your priests and you have your party line and you have your rituals that you go through and you have your hierarchy, and it's really a mirror reflection of the religion that they rejected.
Well, that's a different form of atheism entirely. This, he is, in fact, Dr. Gordon Stein, who did a book review on this just recently in the American Rationalist magazine, which I left at home and brought the 1983 one. He explains the difference between the types of atheism, and you've got this, in fact, on the radio the other day too. He was on WAI. And this is the problem, I think. They assume if you say you're an atheist, you're a communist, and it does not follow as the night, the day. Alas, there are two different kinds. Ours is a philosophical position. Theirs is a political.
One doesn't preclude the other. There are atheists who are Republicans, there are atheists who are libertarians, a lot of atheists who are libertarians, and there are
lots,
also,
yes,
I get in trouble for that statement. And there are also atheists who are Democrats. I've known people who are atheists, consider themselves atheists, because they are angry with something that happened in their life, and therefore convinced that there is no God. You know,
they probably haven't convinced themselves
there
there
are people who are atheists because of their political leanings. You know, they may be a communist and say, well, it's necessary for me to be an atheist then to, you know. So there's as many reasons for non-belief as there are for belief.
This is such a personal topic to talk about God and talk about atheism. It's really something that each person has to work out. and come to some conclusion about. And for me, I think I probably have strong agnostics leanings, because I don't think any person can figure that out. And if it's a mysterious force or whatever it is, that's no answer either, because we, in our quest for answers and our use of our reason, need to figure something out about it and come to some conclusion. We don't like this ambiguity of neither this nor that, and the agnosticism of not knowing. It makes us uncomfortable. And so we try to avoid it and try to find some comfort in a doctrine or philosophy or a metaphor or something that seems reasonable when you look at life and try to figure out what it's all about.
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't expect any of the answers in my time. I just, I wish I could quote things as glibly as some people do. Everything they read, it seems to be right there in their mind to draw out on a moment's notice. But it's something when asked why, a person asked why he was here, said, I'm here to be kind to my fellow man. And they said, well, why is he there? Or they there? And he said, I have no idea.
Yeah. Yes.
So
you might be interested in something here that Huxley said concerning agnosticism. He said, it is wrong for a man to say that he is certain of the objective truth of any proposition unless he can produce evidence which logically justifies that certainty. This is what agnosticism asserts, and in my opinion, it is all that is essential to agnosticism. The application of the principle results in the denial of, or the suspension of judgment concerning, a number of propositions respecting which our contemporary ecclesiastical Gnostics profess entire certainty. In other words, what he's saying is that what people are calling God at his point in time, being all-knowing, omniscient, omnibenevolent, totally good, totally all these things, is something which the mind of man can't conceive. And if he can't conceive it, if he could conceive it, he would be God. And if he can't conceive it, how can he know whether or not it exists?
It seems so, to me, so arrogant of people who can take literature or a book and read it and say that this is the Word of God, knowing that every word in that book was written by a human being. It may be that those people who wrote it were intelligent, were thoughtful, were searching, were trying to grasp something, trying to say something meaningful about it. But when you come right down to it, they're in a field where nobody can really know for sure. And so when they take on this literalism of a book and all the words in it and say this is the truth and the Word of God, then I think they take unto themselves too much.
Well, maybe we'll have to have you back on sometime when we have someone from the objectivist point of view who thinks that they can prove that there is no God. That would be an interesting show. That's about all the time that we have for today. This is Jeff Levan and Catherine Fahringer and Vester Vanstrom saying goodbye for now, and we'll catch you next time on Freethought Forum. Thank you.
No person can deny die Gedanken sind frei.
I think as I please, and this gives me pleasure.
My conscience decrees, this right I must treasure.
My thoughts will not cater
To duke or dictator, no person can deny